Welcome to the Rent to Rent Success podcast, all about creating consistent cash flow, escaping the 9-to-5, and really living life on your terms. This is the only podcast entirely dedicated to helping you achieve rent to rent success. It's our place to inspire each other to believe bigger, to be bolder, and to be game changers for good. I'm Stephanie Taylor, your guide on this exciting ride. Let's start up the engines and get ready to fly. Hello. Stephanie here, and welcome to the 31st episode of the Rent to Rent Success podcast. Wasn't last week epic with Nicky T on episode 30? I'm getting far too many requests, though, for Nicky to be a regular part of the show. What are you guys talking about? No, I think we realized that, Nicky should be more involved going forwards, and hopefully she will be able to persuade her. Well, she actually said she really enjoyed it, and thank you so much for all the messages that we've had since Nicky was on the show. So this week, it's all about how to choose the right property. And before diving in, just want to remind you, do you want to be on our VIP list? Yes, for the pre-launch of the Rent to Rent Success book, we're doing a special pre-launch, which is just for VIPs on our list and everyone who's in our Kickstarter program. So if you want to be part of it, sign up at renttorentbook.com. That's rentbook.com, and we'll have the links in the show notes too. So let's get into this week. What makes a good HMO? Because this is important, because we often think about being chosen, being attractive to landlords and agents who might want to work with us. But we also need to be choosy. We need to choose the right people to work with and the right properties to work with. And here we're going to talk about assessing the aspects of a property. And it's a bit different. It's different to the deal analysis, because this is more about the physical aspects of the property, as well as, is it legal? Will it rent out consistently to the right people? And there's 4 fundamental things to look out for. The 4 L's: licensing and location, which we talked about in episode 29, which is part 1 of this. And today we're talking about layout and lifestyle. So going straight in to layout. This is important. And what do I mean by layout? I mean, does the house work as a house share? It needs to have a good size living space, if that's a requirement in your area. And by requirement, I don't mean a legal requirement. What I mean is going above and beyond what the legal requirements are. Some areas, just houses won't rent as well if they don't have a living area, and you'll be able to see that on Spare Room. Other houses, other areas, so some parts of London, it doesn't make any difference whether they have a living area or not. The rooms will still rent consistently. So it's up to you which one you go for, but depending on your area, you need to make sure that you have what's going to work in your area, and that could be a good size living area. In our area, certainly you do need that. But just pointing out there that it can vary. So it has to look right. It has to work in your marketplace. And you also have to make sure that your bedrooms are a decent size too. And remember now that people of post-corona are more likely to be working from home. So that extra space is important. So I say all this leading up to some houses, a 2-bed house has been chopped up to create a 5-bed. And some of those conversions are just not very pleasant to live in. So, it's been changed to a 5-bed, 2-bath HMO, but the bedrooms feel too small. The living areas feel too pokey. It just doesn't work well. And so when you go to do a viewing on a property, as you go in for the front door, you can get a feeling. That's the same feeling that people will get when they're going to come through the front door as well. You either feel cramped, you either feel light, you either feel open, and you need to just obviously be able to see through anything that needs changing or that can easily be uplifted through decoration. but do the fundamentals of the house work for an attractive place to live in a house share? And not every property meets that. So you need your property to be a good value for the price. The happier your customers are, the happier your business is. And the number one driver in your rent-to-rent success is the lettability of your rooms, because having this will help you to keep your voids low. So you need to ensure that the property you rent, as well as being in the right location, is the right layout, that it's a lovely place to live and the bedrooms feel right sized. I don't just mean above the minimum size, but that they feel like a good size and shape to live in. A house needs to flow. So the final L that we need to think about is a lifestyle. You need to think about how people want to live, because this is a business at the end of the day, and our customers are our tenants. So it's up to you to ensure that you are creating a lifestyle that people want. The product is living. It's a home people love coming home to. And our role as HMO landlords is to make that product as good as it can be, to speak to your marketplace at the right price point that you're pricing your property for. Hey there. Are you curious about making money from properties you don't own? Watch your free rent-to-rent success masterclass and get the full lowdown on rent-to-rent with me. Get started at rent2rentsuccess.com/guide. That's rentsuccess.com/guide. You'll learn more about rent to rent and how it can change your life. Okay, now let's get back to the show. Some of the things that we notice that people really love is extra space. They love that extra storage, because while you can't change the size of a house without major works, you can increase the storage and make it feel more spacious. We found that having 2 wardrobes, for example, can be a real winner. And now that people are more likely to be working from home than in the past, having a desk and an attractive work area can also be important. Ensuring there are enough kitchen units is important too. And I'm surprised how few HMO landlords actually assign the kitchen units. It's something that we weren't doing at the beginning either, but it's so helpful. In some properties, because we've assigned the kitchen units now, we bought extra kitchen units because we realized that there actually wasn't enough space. And it means that when anybody moves out, we can clear those assigned units if they're not cleared. The cleaner, when they go in to do the room clean, also will check the assigned units for that room to make sure that they're all clean and clear for the next person. And it just means that you're keeping on top of things, and there's not various old bits of other people's food rotting that nobody's thrown away because people don't know whether the person's moved out or not. So it's little things like that make a huge difference in the long term. Keep staying on the subject of lifestyle. People love en suites. I mean, that's probably common sense, isn't it? You would imagine that people would want en suites. And so if you have them, your properties will be more in demand than if you don't have them. However, having said that, most of our properties do have shared bathrooms and they still rent consistently. And on the shared bathroom front, we find that a maximum of 3 sharing is what will rent well in our area. 2 is better and 1 is the ideal. So next up on the lifestyle front, we got parking, because 50% of our tenants drive a car. So for them, parking is really important. When you're selling those rooms, 1 out of 2 times is going to be somebody with a car. So it is worthwhile having at least some properties which have parking, whether it's on street parking or whether it's dedicated spaces. Being able to park outside their home, take their shopping in and out, unload and unpack is just such a nice part of lifestyle. If there's a no-go area outside the house, and I have seen HMOs for sales in location where you literally cannot step outside the house, it's not impossible, but it just doesn't work well because it's not an easy place to live for the people who live there. And of course, these are guidelines. In some parts of London, parking is the exception rather than the norm, and parking isn't expected. But if you're in an area where you are getting people where there is an expectation of parking, it's something to take into consideration. However, it's almost always the case that if parking is easily available outside the property, it will be more attractive to people than if it isn't. So the better you get all that right, the fewer voids you will have, the happier your housemates will be, and the more profitable your business will be. So if the HMO is in the right location, next to lots of people hubs, if it has a great layout and space feel, and if it creates a good lifestyle for the people who lives there, you are onto a winner. And we covered a lot today. So I will actually put all those notes in the show notes that come with this episode. And you can get those at renttorentssuccess.com/31 for episode 31. So that's rentsuccess.com/31 for all the show notes. And so that's the 4 L's to look out for in a rent-to-rent HMO. Number 1, licensing. Number 2, location that we talked about in episode 29. And number 3, layout. And number 4, lifestyle that we talked about in this part 2 episode today. I hope this leaves you feeling energized and excited rather than overwhelmed. And if you are feeling a little information overload, now's a good time to remind you. Your focus is 1. You need 1 property to get started. 2 very average properties will cash flow you £1,000 a month. Do you remember Brenda's first property in Kensington? Cash flows over £1,200 a month in London. And you can see Brenda's episode in the Rent to Rent Rockstars. And I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. So you can go over and listen to Brenda's story. So you're here at the end. You're enjoying this. Please do take a few moments to leave a review on Apple Podcasts for us. Thank you so much for being here. Until next week, have a great rest of the week. And remember, believe bigger, be bolder, be a game changer. See you soon.
Thank you so much for listening. If you like the links for anything mentioned in today's episode, or if voice is not enough and you want to see us on video too, you can find all the show notes and lots more at renttorentssuccess.com. That's number 2, rentsuccess.com. If you've enjoyed today's episode, we'd super appreciate it if you would take a few minutes to review it in your podcast app. Remember, we'll be donating to our B1G1 charities too for each review you give. Until then, believe bigger, be bolder, be a game changer.